Hi, my name's Tyson. I'm the co-founder and CTO of ZORA. I'm going to be talking about the eras of money and the new money era and what that means. So I guess I'm going to do a quick start from the very beginning of like why money existed. If we go back, there's this original problem called the double coincidence of wants. What that means is effectively if, for example, I have a cow and I want to get a loaf of bread, there is a translation issue or a transferability issue where it's very, very difficult to determine how much one cow is worth in loaves of bread. So if I want to go from cow to bread, this is a very difficult problem to solve, and obviously it scales with any other asset class. So a very, very long time ago, we came up with a brand new technology called money. Originally, it was just these things called cowrie shells, which were found along the Indian Ocean. But effectively, what it unlocked was the very first concept of quantitative value. So instead of us having this very abstract concept of being able to transfer between assets in a very difficult and high-friction way, we have a unit of account that lets us transfer between any asset that we want. So there are obviously like a number of different evolutions of the medium of money over time. We obviously started with these things called cowrie shells. We moved on to coins. Eventually, we moved on to dollars issued by nations and nation states. And today, we're now issuing cryptocurrencies where we have programmable money. But for every evolution on these kind of evolution of money here, we've had two consistent characteristics for what money has. The very first one is it's a store of value, meaning that it can be acquired, hoarded in some cases, to allow people to collect as much of it as possible. And it's also a medium of exchange, which means that it can be a conduit between two different assets, allowing people to swap between many different things. So these are two things that have kind of always been consistent with money: a store of value and a medium of exchange. To be a store of value, money has to be anchored to something scarce and defensible. And scarce is an important one here because if we look through history, every single version of money has been tied to something scarce or some scarce resource. The form of money that ends up dominating in every single era is something that society believes is scarce and defensible. So if we look at like the very first version of money, scarce shells, cowrie shells were tied to the ability to find them along the coast. Obviously, as civilization scaled and moved inwards, we had to upgrade what that was, so we moved on to coinage. And coinage was tied to scarce metals, which once again, another scarce asset that allowed people to build some level of trust that the value could be held or stored in this asset. Eventually, we moved on to money, where it was originally actually tied to metal, but around the 1970s in America and at different times in different countries, that was completely depegged. But effectively, what that store of value was a belief in scarce credibility. So the ability to believe in the issuing authority of that currency to maintain some level of monetary value associated with it. And that leads us now to today, where we have programmable scarcity. And this is a very huge unlock because instead of us having to rely on a centralized authority, we now have the ability to program money. And anything that can be programmed can now be money, which is very, very powerful. So what I would like to posit is that the next era of money is just attention. Attention itself is a very, very hard asset. And the reason that I believe that is that it is an asset that has a fixed supply. That's just as long as your life. It's a deflationary asset. As long as you're living, the amount of attention that you have remaining is decreasing and is always being spent. You are quite literally spending attention right now. And it's, it's fixed supply as long as we, survive as long as possible. It's already being treated as money by some of the biggest companies in the world. So if you look at TikTok or Meta or Google, they have built their entire companies around the economy of attention. So TikTok, Meta, Google each have built business models around capturing attention and trying to monetize that attention. So I guess the question is, like, how do we realize the value of our attention? We know that it's being monetized by third parties. We know that it's actively being used and spent, but we really don't have a good way of realizing the value that's associated with attention. So the current monetization of attention is done via ads or ad platforms. But if you look at ads, they're effectively sideloaded into content or sideloaded into pieces of information that we want to spend our attention on. What that means is that it's a very inefficient derivative contract on attention, and it doesn't actually represent the value of attention itself. It is purely a basket of different types of pieces of content or pieces of information that can be monetized, but it doesn't really capture the value of attention properly. And further, like as the cost of creating content has gone down, the ability for ads and ad models to actually capture any value from attention has also decreased. We're watching now, I mean, we've seen it for years, but ad blockers freeze read. Every type of new platform that provides information is racing down to razor-thin margins on being able to use advertisements as a valid mechanism for capturing any value. This is especially true now with AI creation and the ability to create content for effectively free. The marginal cost of creating any new piece of content is largely free, whereas in the past, to create newspapers or TV programs, they were very high-cost endeavors, and that meant that they were quite easily monetizable because you had a very low supply and a high concentration of attention in one place. So those advertisements could be very, very valuable. The result that happens, though, is because there's now so much content, it's very, very difficult to get advertisements that are effective and concentrated. So as a result, you have a very, very mispriced attention and then these broken signals of value. So you still can't really tell what content is most valuable because you have this very loose, abstract concept of capturing attention. As a result, you have creators that are getting paid pennies on the dollar. You have platforms that need to capture and hold as much content as possible and never let it escape, or else they will lose that advertising revenue to another platform. And then you have curators who are the ones actually paying that attention who are receiving no benefit from this ecosystem. I don't think anyone here actually likes watching ads before a video or sees ads and says, okay, this is great. It's a pure cost for a curator, even though they arguably provide some of the highest signal and most value to a network that is trying to provide good content for other viewers. So, oh wow, this got all messed up. Nice. Okay. If we look at centralized assets today, like the dollar or fiat currencies, those are issued by nation states, and they allow for monetary policy. So a nation state can control the flow of currency to kind of dictate how much currency is available in the market at any given time. What ends up happening, obviously, is that the value of those currencies completely debases from anything in reality. At any level of scale, centralized control over value leads to market inefficiencies and complete mispricing of the underlying assets. If you look at the US dollar today, for example, or any other fiat currency, they are largely based on nothing but the trust in that centralized issuance authority. I would argue today that content platforms are treating ad-based feeds or algorithmic feeds as a monetary policy for attention today. So you could say that the TikTok algorithm that you're seeing or the Facebook algorithm that you're seeing is largely a monetary policy in the sense that they can choose to direct your attention wherever they wish. But it's inefficient and it's clearly not capturing what's most valuable. So in the same way that we're moving from centralized control to open market control, we must move from centralized feeds to market-based feeds. And I say market-based feeds specifically because markets are the best way for us to organize attention. So if we turn every piece of content into a coin, because as we've learned with Bitcoin, anything that's programmable can now be turned into money. If we turn every piece of content into a coin, we end up with markets that have social features built in and provide real economic signal for the value of the attention that each piece of content is generating. What's really interesting is coins already have some of the same characteristics as viral posts. If you look at any meme coin chart today, it looks something like this, where there's a large spike of attention at the very beginning, and then it effectively dies off and drops to zero. That's exactly what happens with viral posts and pieces of content that are considered valuable in social networks today, but haven't had any value captured in them. So there's a really interesting parallel here where perhaps those things could be intertwined, where you could have a coin that actually is a post. So that's what we've done with ZORA. ZORA is a social network where every post, every creator, and every project is a tradable coin. Why we do that is because we believe that algorithmic feeds can be replaced with market-driven discovery. So creators can get paid directly for the value of the coins that they're creating or the value of the posts or content that they're creating. Platforms can become these marketplaces for content that are incentivized to provide the most valuable assets to users. And then the curators become traders. The curators are the ones that are actually providing their attention and being able to have some skin in the game for posts that they think are viral. I think if you go to any like early YouTube video or early TikTok video, you will see people comment first for that clout. For the very first time, if those pieces of content are coins, they can actually have a monetary upside for being early to content that they think is valuable. So the goal with ZORA is for us to be able to move from social algorithms that are closed, opaque, and monetizing your attention to social markets that are open, transparent, and tokenizing your attention. So the way that we look at it is this: like, if old money is a tool that represents value, then new money is a technology that realizes value. And this is a huge unlock that we've had with crypto, because now anything, like I said, anything that can be programmable can now be a coin. So we've moved into this world where instead of having money as a tool that represents some abstract piece of value, every piece of content on the internet can have value associated directly to it today. That's all I have. If you haven't checked out ZORA, please go to zora.co for the website.